Welcome back to another After Effects tutorial. My name is Lloyd Alvarez, and today's part is called Old School Type Animation. This tutorial is based on two tutorials that Lloyd Alvarez did, I think back about 8 or 9 years. It's a combination of what he did to old school text animation together with the chromatic aberration effect. So when I said old school, then what I meant is the way I started with it. He, of course, in his tutorial did it much more sophisticated. Here is a simple version. So what I started with is a piece of text printed on a piece of paper. Then I crumbled the paper into a ball and then flattened it out again, and this is what I got. Then I put up the camera and recorded a piece of moving text. So I tried some perspective, closer distance, and I crumbled it a bit. So it was all kind of homemade, old school. Okay, let's get started in After Effects. I'm gonna pull in my footage into my project folder, and I'm gonna make sure that the project settings are set to 32-bit. So usually it's set to 8-bit per channel. The 32-bit is supposed to give us better results when we later on use different effects on the video. And the footage, I'm gonna pull it onto a new composition. It's a 1920 by 1080 composition running at 30 frames per second. Okay, so here it is, and all I'm going to do is I am only using the first couple of seconds, so I'm not going to pick the best part, so the technique is the same everywhere. So I'm going to choose the first, I guess, 3 or 4 seconds of the video. Okay, so the first part is we're going to do a quick mask to make sure that all the fingers and the empty spaces around this are out of the picture. So I'm going to draw a mask around my text element, and oh no, maybe I do something before that. Maybe I'll slow it down. So I'm going to go for time stretch, and right now it's oh, sorry, wrong way. I'm gonna stretch it 200%, so it will run half the speed. That doesn't matter. I want the effect should be a little skippy, and it should jump a little bit. So right now it's only running at 15 frames per second, but that's good for the effect. So speed is reduced to 200%, or like stretch it to twice the length. Now let's mask it. And for masking, of course, I use the pen tool, and with the pen tool I also turn on the Roto Bezier, which basically means I'm not creating a polygon mask, but a Bezier mask. So that looks something like this. Make sure you stay far enough away from your text element, and here it is. The next thing is for the period of time that I'm going to use, and for that I'm going to set my my work area to, let's say, around 5 seconds. This is what I want for the first 5 seconds. So anytime I can render a preview for this period of time. For this 5 seconds, I have to make sure that the mask actually shows the text. So make sure as you scroll through and that it's not leaving the mask anywhere. I'm going to give it a bit more space on top. So I'm going to make my mask slightly larger on top and smaller on the bottom. Let's check again. But I think, yeah, that was good before. So like this. And in addition to that, I'm also going to give the mask a feathered border. So I'm going to hit here, hit M, open the mask, feather, and it's this is 1000 pixels, so it's 1080 pixel high. So I guess somewhere around feather of 50 pixel should be enough. But it doesn't matter, because the next step we're going to get rid of the the wrinkles anyway, so we're not going to see the paper there. I'm also going to turn off the mask. So here's the button to turn the mask visible or not visible. So it's not visible anymore. Let's get to the next step. So we masked it out. The next thing is I'm going to hit invert. So I'm going to add the invert effect. So here under effects and presets, I'm going to find invert. Here's the channel invert. And always make sure whatever effect you place on it, it should be, of course, a 32-bit, because otherwise, if it's just an 8 or 16-bit, you kind of lose the amount of color depth again, or like luminance depth. So invert and pull it onto your video. Here it is. Now it's white text on black background. And now the next step is to get rid of the wrinkle area. And what we're going to use for that is we're going to use the effect levels. With levels, so with the effect color correction levels, I get a histogram, and that tells me how many pixels are in which brightness range. So we got the darkest pixels on the left side and the brightest one on the right side, of course. The perfect white pixels here of the text, they are in the very light area there, and the rest is the grayish paper that I now have from inverting it. So I just take the histogram and take this little triangle here and move it so that I pass most of the gray areas, so somewhere right here. Don't go too far, because then suddenly it will also eat away and you lose some details. So try to get as close as possible to the former gray things. And you can also move this a little bit, which maybe a little bit closer. Yeah, that sounds good. Oh, sounds good, looks good. Good. The next thing is you can see that the text here is slightly out of the center, and especially when it's running, I guess it's even, oh, there's a, no, I thought there's a part where yes. So here looks like we have a part where we can see even more of the gray things, and make sure it also works at this area. Yes. Okay. So, and what I try to do is I try to move the whole layer so that the text is a little bit more centered. So I'm going to just take the whole layer, or you can also change P for position, and now the whole layer is a little bit more centered here. Good. So now what we're going to do is we are going to if you look now at the text, you can see that it has a really strong, a really sharp edges, or sharp borders, and you'll find out what would be a way to make it less sharp. That would be to blur it. But if you blur something like this, and let's try it quickly, if you put a blur on it, so a quick one, Gaussian, or even a fast box blur, if you put the blur on it, you notice here's the blur radius in pixels, and the iterations, like how smooth the blurring is. And if you start to blur something like this, you notice it goes away, because the borders will be blurred with the neighboring pixels, and with 1 pixel, 2 pixels, and yeah, 6 pixels, it's almost gone. So this is not the best way to actually get rid of the sharp edges. So instead of that, I did something else, and that is I use a blur. I use a glow. Let's go for a glow quickly, and you will see how that turns out. So let's go for a glow. Stylize glow, and I'm going to put a glow here. You can see right away that the glow will make the text much brighter. Before the glow, and after the glow. And there's a little bit of glowing around that of course can be regulated with a distance, how far it's glowing, the radius, how far it glows out, the intensity with 1 and so on. But what I'm trying to do is I don't like the text lighting up so bright. So it's pure white here, and that is because the glow will be added, with the pixels, and that usually makes them clip at pure white pixels. So if you change the glow operation to none, it will kind of glow, but it will create a much more blurry version of it. And now what I'm trying to do is, what I'm doing is, I'm creating 3 copies of my text. And you can see if the glow threshold, which basically makes it grow a little bit, and the grow radius also makes it larger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a copy, or better 2 copies of my text, and I'm going to give them 3 different glow radii. So right now I'm going to choose the largest one. Here it's, let's get the intensity down a bit. So let's go for 0.6. So it's now all a little bit darker. And here is the glow radius of 15. And now I'm going to take this layer and hit Control D, because now the settings are for the bottom layer. And now I hit Control D 2 times. So I create the same layer on top of each other. And now I'm going to select every separate layer. If you want to see how this layer looks alone, you can either solo it. That means you click on this little button, or of course you can turn everything above off, or even below. So now I'm taking the middle one and make the radius slightly smaller. It was 15, like here it's like 7. And take the one on top, where the radius is even, let's go for 3. Okay, so hardly any result. Now, every layer by itself looks a little different. So more blurry, the further to the bottom you get, the more blurry they are. And now what we're going to do is, instead of having normal, each layer hiding all the layers underneath, I'm going to turn those layers, especially the top 2 ones, to a blend mode of add. And if I use blend mode add and add, basically what I get is, first you get the pure white, or the much brighter white text elements, but you still get the blurry edges. See, there is some blurriness here outside and so on. That comes all from the bottom layer that was glowing the most. So just 3 different glow values on top of each other. Okay, so right now it doesn't look a lot. So but let's continue. Now the first thing is, we have 3 layers now. The first time we're going to pre-compose it, because I don't want all those 3 layers. And so I can select all 3 layers, do a right click and choose Precompose. And of course all the attributes will be moved into the new composition. So if I select Precomp, now it's only 1 layer, and if you go to effect controls, it's empty, because all the effects are in the layers inside of this composition. Now what I'm going to, in this Precomp, and later on we can come back anytime to do something with the Precomp. So in this Precomp I'm going to add another effect, and that is a tint effect. And pretty much here, 32-bit tint effect on it. And instead of having a white text on my background, I'm going to choose a color that I would like for my title animation. I'm going to choose a kind of almost dark orange hue, saturation, a dark orange color. Because that dark orange color, because the pixels are so bright, because we had 3 layers on top of each other. Here's the info tab, and when you hold the info tab, remember we are in 32-bit. That means actually a color of a brightness of 1, or a color, amount of color of 1, was for 8-bit only. Everything above 1 is usually then more than 8-bit, so it's a much higher value. And when you hold your mouse on one of those values, you can see that we got a red of 2.7, 1.2, and hardly any blue. So we get much more light, and that's why the orange that we added here is actually not a dark, it's not an orange like this, but it's more like a yellow. But towards the edge, you can see even like a flame, it goes towards like orange reddish thing. That comes from the 3 layers that I put on top of each other. So to make it less confusing, I keep this Precomp as it is. Of course you could name it smartly, but now I'm going to Precompose it again, and because the last composition will be dealing with the effect that we're planning to do. So right click, Precompose, again, like this. The new Precomp has no parameters, no effects in it, and so on. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try to create the chromatic aberration effect. And the chromatic aberration effect means that it splits up the colors into their red, green, and blue component, and they are slightly off. So chromatic aberration means that the colors that make up the light get split off towards the edge of a lens, and that's why you get those blue and red distancing towards the edge. So we're gonna start pretty simple. We're gonna add 3 different effects on it. Effects and presets. The first effect that we're gonna use is one that's called shift channels. Shift channels. Shift channels means you can, let's place it on it and then you see it. Shift channels means you can take the new red channel from another channel for something else, and so on. So you can see that you can, for example, usually the alpha is from brightness, but you can also take alpha from the red channel, and so on. So just place it, and we're gonna make the settings later. Shift channels, I'm gonna place it on it. The next one will be another tint, because we also have to tint them in the corresponding color. So we're gonna place another tint on it. Do not change it yet. It turns white, that will change soon. And the last thing is we are going to add a layer that's called optics compensation. Optics compensation, and also place this one here. So we placed 3 effects on it without changing anything. The reason being because I'm going to make 2 copies of my layer, and I want to make those changes individually for every copy, because we're going to split up those picture into the 3 colors, and that's why we need 3 layers. So we're going to hit Control D 3 times, and I'm also going to rename my layers. So I'm going to tip the top one, I hit Enter on my keyboard, call this one red. The next one, Enter, green. And the last one, you guessed it right, blue. So I made 3 copies. So now every copy that I made has the same effect. So now I'm going to start with the top one, and I'm going to turn the others off. I'm starting with the top one. And now for the top one, which is called red, I'm going to tell him to take red from red, but also green channel from red, and blue channel from red. So all the 3 color channels are the former red color channel. Does that make sense? The former red color channel now makes up all the channels. So basically you have a grayscale version of what was red before. And now I'm going to use tint to actually make it red. So instead from not from black to white, but from black to red. And you have to take a pure red, so click on white and choose RGB as your color model, RGB, and now make sure it's, remember, 1 is pure red, not 255. We are in a 32-bit model, so 1 is pure red and 0 not. So you choose 1, 0, 0. That is the pure red in RGB. And you hit OK. So that colorizes the red channel perfectly. For the optics compensation, we do that later. I'm going to turn the layer off and I'm going to take my green layer. Now, I do the same thing only for green. I take the red from the green channel, I take the green from the green, and also the blue from the green channel. And of course, map white to, change white to green, so I'm going to have to change it to 0, 1, 0. So 0, 1, 0. That is the pure 0, 1, 0, yes. Pure green, and turn it off. And the last one, the blue channel, takes red from blue, green from blue, and blue from blue. And see, there's not a lot of blue in it, of course, because it's an orange font. So the blue channel is much darker. And I'm gonna change the tint color from white to blue, of course. It is 0, 0, 1. So now here it's pure perfect blue. Now if I turn on all the layers, and of course the red layer that is on top will hide all the others, but not if you turn them all into a blend mode that adds the colors together. So switch the blend mode to add. You actually wouldn't need the bottom one, I guess, so the bottom one can stay normal, but in this case I'm going to set them all to add. So now we have the original color back because we took every color channel and painted it in a certain color, and that we added it together, and then it will be the original colors again. So, and now the fun begins when you start to move a layer. For example, if I take the green layer and I move it, you can see, oh, it's suddenly, when they are not perfectly on top, they split up and then they show up green and red and blue and so on. So what we need to do is now we somehow weirdly have to move them around. And that's what we use the optics compensation for. And the optics compensation is for every color is, we're going to start with red. And if you look at optics compensation, let's try what it does. If you change the field of view, you can see somewhere at 100, you can see it starts like as if it's bending. It's bending the text, the red text. Actually, what we want is we won't want to bend it inwards, but we want reverse lens direction, so we want to bend it outside. So now you can see the text bends out. You can see it's on one side more than on the other. This is because the center of everything is here. So you can also set this to really to the center of the text so that in both directions goes the same way. And now I'm going to set my optics compensation for my red channel to, let's go for 100. That's a little bit less than that. 100. Let's maybe go for 90. Okay, red is now, let's go for 80, even smaller. So red is 80. Now I'm going to give them different values. Now I take green, make sure it's reverse. I'm going to set green to 90 and blue to 100. So now you see they slightly in the middle, they still fit, but towards the outside, they don't fit anymore. If the order is not looking good, and you can also play like putting the red, I think it doesn't make much of a difference. No, it doesn't. Okay, so remember this is still a piece of film. We're just watching the first picture. So let's hit the space bar once and it will calculate a preview for our work, for the time of our work area. So let's hit space. Only when it's set to green, it's running in real time. So there it is. Okay, and now we can even bring a little bit of randomness in it. For example, we can, right now it's every one of those optic compensation is 80, 90, and 100. So they are 10 pixels apart from each other. So what I'm going to do is now they're all 80 and 90 and 100. I'm going to add a little randomness with a wiggle factor in it. And a wiggle means if I wiggle, say, for example, every second, you can wiggle 10 more or less. And that would, if you go back to one of the classes where we talked about expressions, this is how we can use them. So here on the field of view, right now it's set to 80. I'm using an Alt click on the stopwatch. That will open a window where I can type in something, and I'm going to type in wiggle. And the first letter is the first number is the frequency. So 1 means 1 time per second, comma, and then 10 is the change. So every second it will wiggle up or down randomly for 10, the value of 10. So if you now watch the field of view here, you can see that when I move it, it's randomly going up and down. And I'm going to do the same with the two other layers. I didn't want to move this. So I'm going to do the same thing with the two other layers. So let's close the red layer, take the green one. Here right now it's 90, so Alt click and then wiggle. Also maybe 1 point, let's do 0.8, so a little bit faster than 1 second, 0.8, comma, and let's do 15. And the last value here, blue, Alt click on the watch, wiggle, 1.2, comma, and 18. So even more. Good. So that will add much more randomness in it. So you see sometimes it's getting larger, see the T, and you could also bring more randomness into it by giving them, for example, different, and I think I did that by accident. See, the field of view center here is at a different point for the 3 letters. So let's quickly fix that. Here is the field of view is 886568. It was somewhere here. Yes, right here above the N. Then for the next value here, right above the N. And for the blue also, you could also link those numbers, but they have the same, should have the same center. Okay, so there it is. The blue is really weak. You can see that here. And I wonder why the red and green stick so perfectly together. No, they don't. They don't, just split up here. Okay, so it just, that is just a little bit later on. Looks different. Okay, so there it is, a really simple effect. Let's hit space one more time to calculate the preview. And there it is. If your blue is not strong enough, See, the blue is really weak. Where is the blue channel? Here. What we could do is, we could make the blue just a bit stronger. What you could do is, you could try, instead of having the blue color that you used in the tint, instead of 1, you could try 3. See, now it's a much more blue actually, and that gives you a little bit stronger blue color. There it is. Okay, so I hope you liked it. We played around with different effects a lot. We had fun working with different inverts, levels, and we tinted in different colors. And then at the end, we used the shifter channel to split it up into the 3 colors, tinted it in the corresponding colors, and used the optics compensation to create this random effect that kind of splits up the colors like at the edges of a lens. So I'm still calculating a previs. There it's nicely split up. And of course, there it is, now running in real time. Okay, so I hope you liked it. Don't forget, I put the link for the 2 inspirational tutorials into the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave me a like if you want, and I'll see you in the next video.